Yeah, thanks for joining, everyone. We're super excited to have everyone here. Thank you all for tuning in. Whether you're currently at work or you're on your way home or you're currently at home already, we do not take this for granted and we really, really appreciate your presence here today. But before we get started, I would love to know where you are joining us from. I am joining from Nigeria, Lagos to be precise. So we'd love to know where you are joining us from. So please kindly use the comment section to share with us where you are joining us from today. Oh, we have someone joining from England. You're welcome. Hi, Amanda, joining from Kent. We're super excited to have you here today. Oh, someone joining from US, London. Thank you all. It's great to have you all here. Joining from UK. I think UK is leading. Thank you all for joining today. Um, so I'll
Thank
just
you.
go over to the next slide. So the theme for the June edition is Speak with Authority. And we have a speaker here, Lape. She is an international broadcast journalist, documentary producer, and senior lecturer in journalism and digital media. And today she will be sharing with us practical tools to help us communicate with greater clarity, confidence, and authority. So quickly, this is the event agenda for the day. We have intro about BYP, founder and speaker's profile. Then we have the discussion, and then we have the question and answer. Then we close for the day. If this is your first time here, welcome. This is BYP Network. It simply stands for Black Young Professional, but the young is at heart, definitely. It was founded in 2016 by Kike Onimide Agoro to connect Black professionals to career opportunities, offering visibility, career opportunities, business support. It was inspired by the lack of Black representation beyond sport and entertainment, and Kike created BYP to diversify talent pipelines and drive change. We will be 10 years this year because we started since 2016, and we are super, super excited so far with the growth for BYP Network. Today, BYP Network has grown into a global movement empowering Black professionals through career opportunities, mentorship, and industry connections. And as a connector, BYP links members to job, mentors, events, and thought leadership by partnering with top organizations to drive workplace diversity and leadership growth. We measure our impact through meaningful connections like this one, career progressions, and skills development. Our vision is to change the Black narrative. A quick link for you to join the community. BYP Network has different chapters in different communities globally. And if you'd like to join us to stay updated to upcoming events like this one, mentorship, opportunities, please kindly scan the QR code and a link will be in the comment section shortly as well. About BYP founder and CEO, Kike Oniwide, she is the founder and CEO of BYP Network, a multi-million pound company advancing the careers of Black professionals. Our bio is definitely robust. And thanks to how we have a platform like this one where we can all come together, learn from experts, and also connect with one another. You can follow Kike Onumide Agoro on LinkedIn and also via Instagram to stay updated to other innovations from her. About our speaker, Lape Olarinoye is an international broadcast journalist, documentary producer, and senior lecturer in journalism and digital media at the University of East London, with over a decade of screen experience across major global broadcasters such as Sky News, CNN, and now TRT World. She has reported on some of the world's most significant stories from conflict zones to public health crisis. She is the founder of Clear Cut Communication, where she delivers media training, public speaking, coaching, and communication workshops for professionals. Our work is rooted in over a decade of real newsrooms experience and academic research into race representation and communication in British media. She's also a doctoral researcher and a fellow of the Higher Education Academy. Thank you so much, Lape, for coming on here today to share your wealth of experience with each and every one of us and also equip us with the necessary tools to thrive in the professional space. So over to you, Lape.
Oh, thank you very much, okay, for that wonderful introduction. I'm very glad and honored to be here with all of you. I think there's roughly about 45 of you here, so really excited to have you here, taking time out of your busy evenings to equip yourself on skills that hopefully you'll be able to use for the rest of your lives and in your everyday lives, and especially in the modern workspace. So without any further ado, I'm going to open up my... share my screen, just a second. This intends to be a very interactive session. So please feel free to use the chat section. Okay, has kindly agreed to help assist with that. Can I just confirm that you can all see my screen? Okay, I know you are on mute. Can you just let me know? Because now I can only see my
Yes,
screen.
yes, we can. We can see your screen. It looks good.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for clearing that up. So today's session is going to be mainly about helping many of you who are professionals, entrepreneurs, industry insiders, and experts to learn how to speak with authority. And what does that mean? Improving your clarity when you're engaging, your communication, and more importantly, your confidence. So this workshop will embody communication tools for many of us in the room who come from Black, African, and other ethnic minority backgrounds who tend to have this hunch of having to work twice as hard to be heard. Now, today we're going to break down how you can navigate through that, maintain your authority, and also improve your confidence when you walk into those high stakes and even low stake conversations. I am a bit congested today. Apologies for that, but we will power through. I intend, like I said, for it to be a very interactive session where you will learn about myself, my background, and the tools, tricks, and tips that will help you, hopefully, be more confident in the way you engage after this session. So a little bit about myself. Okay, has nicely or summarized that for you, but I'm going to go into more of a storytelling background into that. I have had over a decade's worth of broadcast journalism experience. Currently, an international correspondent, working across the world. I've worked in parts of Africa, Europe, and now more recently within the Middle East, telling stories that matter and raising the profile of very important stories that often don't get told. At the same time, I'm also a senior lecturer in journalism and digital media, and I tend to teach a lot of students from Black and minority ethnic backgrounds as well as others. And that has helped me really develop my knowledge and has inspired me to begin my research. I'm a PhD researcher, and my research is looking at race representation in British mainstream media as somebody that's worked on the inside and has been in newsrooms. And finally, I'm the founder of Clear Cut Communications, where we engage with people on a one-to-one basis, bespoke training, media training, public speaking engagements, and all in all, helping people like yourselves develop that confidence, that clarity, and enhance their communication skills so that when they walk into interviews, when they have the opportunity to be on camera for the media, and so on and so forth, they are able to really present the best version of themselves. It's a soft skill that many people are investing in now because more and more in modern day life, we tend to engage with media a little bit more. But other than just media, we have everyday conversations, interactions. Some people are up for promotions. And we all need that soft skill to be developed, whether we like it or not. It's something that is really important in the modern day that shouldn't be neglected. It does really set you apart from the rest. And just to tell you a little bit about my background, so I've always been, if you like, the only one in the room. What does that mean? For me, I started out going to a British inner city school. That changed very quickly when I moved to a boarding school in the outskirts of England. I lived and studied in a place called Eastbourne, British countryside, quintessential English boarding school. And that was the first time I knew that I was a Black female. I was the only Black girl in my year. And that began this trajectory of me really understanding my identity, who I am, and how I can be confident in those spaces that tend to make a lot of us feel smaller. Whether you're Black, whether you're a young person, whether you're a female, whatever it may be that makes you feel that you're different or that you're in the minority, I took the opportunity and I took the choice and decision to start using that as something that I've called my superpower. Thereafter, many years after, I began my career into journalism, and my first gig, if you like, in journalism was at Sky News. And then I was working behind the screen as a producer. Again, I was the youngest on the team. I was working on the live at 5 News. I was the youngest on the team, and I was also the only black girl on the team. Very quickly, I understood not only how cutthroat the industry was, how ruthless and how competitive, but imagine having that and also being the minority in the room. I didn't let that set me back. In fact, what I did was use that as a way to bring more innovative ideas, using a different angle to tell stories, to source information, to gain access. And thankfully, that made me stand out. As a result of that, I went on a sabbatical and went around the rest of the world and told stories, and I was slowly becoming the front of the camera journalist. And fast forward to a few years after that, I got my first gig on camera, in front of the camera, as a home desk correspondent. For those of you who don't understand that lingo, that means the person that you see on TV that is out in front of the story, telling you what's happening, making those reports that we see on the news when you engage, if you engage with that kind of content, and flying around the world to tell stories. So that became my role for a number of years. And in doing so, I once again found out that I was the first female black correspondent at Sky News, which was a baptism of fire. There were correspondents from other ethnic minorities, but actually I was the first black female. That, of course, spearheaded the doors to be open for others as well. We do tend to see a lot more female newsreaders, black female newsreaders, and so on. But actually, there's different types of categories of journalists. And I was honored to be, with something which I fought for, to be the black female correspondent at Sky News at the time. And I was able to gain access, tell stories, fight for things that I really wanted to talk about without being disruptive, of course, but justifying my position there. In fact, a lot of those skills that I learned there helped me to equip people like yourselves with these tools, using confidence to speak clearly, to communicate effectively, and to also make sure that my message always landed and landed well. So without further ado, that's kind of a little bit about my background and what I do and my journey into this space. I'm now going to talk to you very briefly about what we'll be covering tonight. We have an hour, and I don't want us to run out of time. But we're going to be looking at 5 key areas, and those areas will range from what the problem is. Why is it harder to really hone in and identify what those issues are? What are the real problems and challenges that are causing you to feel less confident, to feel smaller in the room, to not feel important in putting your point across? Maybe you've been deterred into applying for that promotion. You've been quite worried about getting a certain type of client if you're an entrepreneur, not wanting to put your hand out, thinking that nobody's going to listen to you. What are those problems and how can they be solved? And that's where we talk about the method, the clear-cut method, which is the pause, frame, deliver. And we'll talk about that in some depth as the time goes on. We'll later talk about the action, looking at examples of poor language, poor framing. What are we all saying that we don't realize is actually holding us back from coming across as more confident, more authoritative in spaces that we should be? And then presence. How do we own the room in a world that media is taking over? We're having a lot more engagements online. Virtual spaces are becoming the go-to for communication. How do we make sure that we're still owning the room? What are those soft skills, those small gestures and composures that we're using and losing, if you like, that are not helping ourselves move forward? And then finally, we'll discuss some of the hard moments that we can all encounter. We've all faced at some point in the workspace and in business spaces as well. I'll allocate some time at the end, finally, for some question and answer. We could do some live practice of your questions and how we can get around that. So I intend for this to be a very interactive session. I don't want it to be me just talking at you for the next couple of minutes. So for now, I'd like everybody in the chat just to say hi and your role, just so I have an understanding of what kind of industries people are coming from. Okay is going to kindly tell me what people are saying, what kind of mix of people that we have in the room tonight. So if you can all do that just whilst I'm talking, so we get a clarity of the kinds of professionals we have in the room. So to identify what the real problem here is, why everybody feels as though communication is often harder when you're one of the few in the room. You might be maybe the new joiner in the room, you might be the only female, you might be the youngest in the room, and so on. What are some of those problems that we all encounter? And from what I've understood, from conversations, from my observations as well, there are four key areas where people really struggle with communication. I've had the privilege of having to talk to people as a journalist from a range of backgrounds, whether that's really senior people, politicians, experts, but also the everyday person. So communication can feel harder depending on who you're speaking to, and also if you aren't really sure if you're the person to be the one doing that communication. So time pressure is a big part of this. If you are in an industry where you feel as though you have to respond to that email straight away, you have to engage as soon as you're called upon, it doesn't give you that space to think about what you want to say, what your answer is. And some people think time can indicate fear. And well, actually, I'm here to tell you that that's completely not true. Time pressure has been something that has really impacted how people communicate. It doesn't allow you space to think properly or how to compose your response, whether that's via email or that's even in person. And we'll go into detail in the next couple of slides on the importance of what the pause can do when you're communicating. There's also the challenge of social pressure. In many cases, for those of us who live in the diaspora here today and live abroad, there is that issue of social pressure. How am I being perceived? Am I being judged before I even speak? Are people judging me for the color of my skin, for my age, for my gender? Are people looking about how I sound? Are people trying to scrutinize me for things that I think aren't just about, what's on my CV? So there's that underlying social pressure there too. Then there's the performance pressure. Okay, expected to always know the answer, expected to always deliver, to look composed, to sound like you know what you're talking about, to making sure that you're hitting all your KPIs, and so on and so forth. The performance pressure is something that everybody in the room has faced at some point, and that is something that is an ongoing unlearning that we need to do, that your performance shouldn't always put pressure on you on how to communicate. And the fourth, of course, pressure is the identity load. How do you manage how much of yourself to bring to the table? Many of us in the room have experienced what people have uh, described as code switching. Is so tiring. It costs a lot of energy. Many people feel as though they're faking it till they make it. People feel as though they have to put who they are at the door and wear another coat of who they aren't when they walk into those professional environments. And that is something that a lot of people who don't feel the way we feel, so to speak, they don't have that extra load, that pressure um, in communicating, in bringing themselves to work, in their professional branding, in who they are at work, and how they behave and conduct themselves in the modern day workspace. And this is something that is hardly acknowledged in communication training. And I'm not sure if any of you have been to communication training, but a lot of the times, communication training is targeted and directed at a certain group of people, whether that's executives, whether that's people from a certain background or level. And actually, what makes this workshop unique is the fact that we are addressing things that a lot of people don't know exists. And so today we're going to break those challenges and pressures down. At Clearcut, we describe what this feeling as the credibility tax. It's the tax you pay before you even open your mouth. A lot of people don't experience this. And this is something that we see on a day to day basis, having to pay more of that pressure and having to feel as though you have to pay more for that when actually a lot of other of your colleagues aren't feeling the same way. um, how watching how you land, how the message is perceived, how that email tone is received by somebody you've sent it to. Maybe you feel as though you're not really keen on going to that after work drinks, but you feel like you're being judged for that. And a lot of that attention is focused on, actually, am I being monitored for these things, or these things that aren't visible? There's the confidence myth as well. When people tell you to be more confident, I often call this bad advice, because confidence is the outcome and not the method. Chasing that feeling makes you even more nervous, or walking into an interview and thinking, I really have to come across as confident. Most of the time, that often comes across in a negative way. It's very obvious when you're trying to be overconfident or making an effort to be confident. It's a skill that you should practice every day in your interactions, in your engagement, no matter who or where, to develop that so that it becomes a natural part of your being and how you come across. Your structure, your articulation, how you answer questions, the pace, not the volume or how polished you sound, or how English you sound, if you like. Authority are a set of habits that you can rehearse, and that's really the good news here. And we're going to go into that method, and we're going to practice that through this session. It's very basic, but it's something like a muscle. If you don't use it, it almost becomes redundant. You have to constantly use this skill over and over again to come across. It's not something that I just woke up knowing how to do. It's cost me years of practice, engagement, interaction, to build that knowledge and skill over the years. I've had the privilege of being in newsrooms, working with young people, students every day, presenting a lot, whether that's on the camera, off the camera, or even in person. So I've had the privilege of being able to put that skill to good use. But I can tell you that the people who command the room and are great at presenting and can get people's attention aren't always the most confident people. They are the most prepared. They have practiced, they have researched, they know what they're going to say, they know how to articulate themselves, they know how to structure what they're going to say, they take pauses when necessary. And these are some of the tools and the things that you need to equip yourself to become that person. So ignore anyone that says be more confident. Being more confident requires time, it requires skill, and some of those we're going to cover today. So the clear cut method in enhancing that skill. So just before we go into the method, I would like to just get some feedback of what we've had in the chat so far. Okay. Okay. Is there anyone in the chat that we know that has
Yes,
certain
we
background?
did get a lot of responses. So we
Fantastic.
have from Home Inspection in North Carolina.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, we have junior business analyst, medical doctor, assistant manager in tax accounting. We have someone in HR coordinator, CEO of teacher training company, HR analyst, accountant, business relationship manager. We have senior public affairs and government relations consultant, health and care worker, virtual assistant, senior leader primary school. We have criminal investigator, awesome, public
Wow.
relations stakeholder engagement for infrastructure projects. We have senior data analyst. We have NHS spine program, large SAP programs at large corporations. Okay, this person is planning on the rollout. Manager, we have, okay,
Wow. So we have a large cross section of people
yeah,
from,
corporate
I would
event
say,
manager, insurance, founder, engineering consultant. Yeah.
fantastic. Thank you all for joining. I think, at this point, everybody has something to take away from today. And we have, like I said, a large cross section of people from all industries, from all walks of life. Don't feel as though this is not for you, or that you won't engage, you won't benefit from something here today, because this is basic conversation. We all have conversations every day. We engage with people from all walks of life, and that is evident in the amount of people that are here today. And so, for that reason, I think it's really important that we all take from this this method that I say that improves your confidence, your clarity, and your communication across all industries and professional backgrounds. So at Clearcut, our method for structuring the way you speak, the way you come across is what we call pause, frame, and deliver. It's a 3-step structure that is used across a lot of live newsrooms. I use it every time I go live on air, in every high stakes professional environment, in every conversation, in every interaction I have, even with my children. I use this same method. Okay, so pause is the first thing I would say. People are often so afraid of pausing. They feel like they have to fill in silence. They feel like they have to talk over anybody that is quiet, or is using that moment to gather their thoughts. But listen, before you respond, when you want to use this pause, you should always just breathe. You shouldn't have to rush to respond. It doesn't give you a chance to think. It doesn't give you a chance to articulate, structure, or compose yourself before you answer. So 1 second can feel very long to you, but actually, a lot of people do it when they're doing public speaking. If you've listened to TED Talks or you've been at keynote speaker events and so on, people often pause because immediately it gets the attention of everybody in the room. And 1 second, like I said, can feel very long, but actually it grabs the attention of everybody else. And in broadcasting, we describe this as the reset, and it signals who is in control here. So you take the control back by pausing. If I ask you a question, you might know the answer to it, but you want to think about how you want to answer that. I've interviewed politicians that use this often because they don't want to rush to answer and then become a viral sensation within the next 24 hours. They don't want to rush and become the next headline in the next 24 hours. So using that pause is very, very effective. And we should all be using that before we answer anything. It does signal a lot of authority in your conversations. Whilst you're making that pause, you should be framing what your next sentence should be. So don't lead with a sentence that is already making you feel inferior or making you sound inferior. It should lead to where you're going with the answer to the question. So, for example, if somebody asked me a question in a meeting, excuse me, somebody asked me a question in a meeting, the first thing I would always say is when I've taken a pause is, well, from my perspective, the key issue here is immediately that tells the audience or the people in the room where I'm going next. It's a very good way to open, and it opens with direction. As somebody that's listening to you, if they're hearing you say, well, from my perspective, the key issue here is, they already know that the next sentence is immediately going to explain what those key issues are and from your standpoint. So automatically you have the authority in the room. You've created structure, and people often follow structure. And then finally, you deliver. People often ramble when they want to deliver a point, when they're trying to position themselves in an argument, in an interaction. And there's no need for that. If you can deliver one point very clearly and just stop, it definitely lands better in the room. And those who land better are the ones who choose what matters most. They are the people that can take control of the conversation. They're the go-to people automatically, and they can say it without an apology. Okay, so don't say 4 points. Don't try and overcomplicate your argument. Say one key strong point and leave it there. That way, it stays in people's minds. They remember, and you become somebody or an expert or speaking from an authoritative position. And you should always say this without an apology, and I'll tell you why. A lot of people tend to start their sentence with, oh, sorry, can I just, or I don't know if this makes sense. Those kinds of openers are very, very ineffective. But the reasons why starting with direction when you frame your answer, why those work is because, one, the pause is always going to buy you thinking time. And like I said, it signals composure, not hesitation. And it makes people want to listen to what you're about to say next, which is why when you're framing, you have to make sure what you're about to say next is worth your while. Otherwise, you've lost the room immediately. People often ask me, how long should I pause for? Do I need to pause for 5 seconds? Well, it's a very gray area. If you pause for too long, you lose the room and it starts becoming very weird. If you pause for too little, it doesn't really work as a pause. So 1 to 2 seconds is my advisory time frame of on how to pause, how long to pause for. It might feel like a long time to you in a conversation, but actually it signals confidence to everybody else. And it's not awkward. It's only awkward if you do it for too long, or if you look anxious or you sound nervous. But actually, it's that moment that you have to posture yourself, to breathe, and then to deliver. Always slow down. I mean, there's a lot of us that naturally speak quite fast. Maybe they feel like they ramble when they're speaking. If you've observed that about yourself, now start to consciously slow down. Make one point and say it slowly, because people that tend to ramble or rush open doors for interruption. People's messages get lost, and unfortunately, you've lost the authority of the room. So if you are that person that speaks very fast, or you ramble when you're making your points, or you lack structure when you're speaking, start to think about how you can slow down and reduce your pace. This last one is about, the trap to avoid, right? Because a lot of the times we say, it's a mistake I make sometimes, even now as a professional. So you always have to be conscious of, not always saying, so, or I guess. Basically is one that is quite annoying for myself. Personally, a lot of people start their sentences with basically, or, sorry. You should never open a sentence with an apology. And a lot of the times I'm doing it even now, is a sentence filler. And people should always find a way to avoid using that. And a pause can always help that. If you pause to think, you find it's easier not to fill those gaps in your sentences with words like so, I guess, basically, and so on. So it turns a powerful pause into nerves when you fill all these gaps in. And so for that reason, you should always hold those gaps in your sentences with composure. And it's far better than just talking over. So now framing is the second method. So we've discussed pausing. So now we're going to look at frame. Okay. There are 5 key openers here that I'm going to leave you with that create structure. Okay. And I've described them using newsroom and journalist buzzwords. So the headline, it's what we call in journalism as the inverted pyramid. Always start with the most important thing first. Don't talk about the backstory. Don't give us context. Just start with your conclusion. So go straight into what your recommendation is. Go straight into what you think your solution is, and go straight to the point. One point, remember, always start with one point and state what it is in one sentence. That way, people are already listening because you've already provided them with information that they are attentive to. The second thing when trying to frame is to signpost. Tell the room where you're taking them to. In the previous example, I spoke to you about what my perspective is and what the issue I think is here. In this case, you can do the same thing. There are 2 issues here. Let me take each in turn. That way, people know what to expect. Okay, she's going to explain 2 issues, and here are what those issues are going to sound like. It's almost like a mental map. So signpost people when you're talking so that people can follow your point. You don't want to start talking and people drop off, people deviate, or you're finding that even yourself in your articulation, you're losing the room or you're losing your own point. So that's why it's good to stick to one point and start with your recommendation first. So always remember, lead with your conclusion first. Another trick that you can use is the contrast, to always set your point against an alternative. For example, the easy option is A, the right one is B, and here is why. That way, people understand what's on ground, and the alternative is what you're suggesting. Not only does that put you in a position of power, it suggests that you are coming up with innovative solutions, and it also makes you feel as though you've considered all the arguments, and here is what you're proposing. Contrast, I always say, makes a point land because it gives people 2 things to compare and think about. And that way, once again, you are positioning yourself as the confident expert in the room. Numbers always work. I say 3 is always the magic number. Name how many points you have. 3 always works really well. I have 1 concern, 1 suggestion, and maybe 1 solution, for example, and state each of them. And the number also helps people follow, because if you don't, you're just talking and talking and nobody knows when you're going to stop talking, and how long you're going to be talking for. Whereas when you number your issues and your points, it tells the room exactly when you'll be done and what to expect. And finally, the stakes. What are you going to open with? Always open with what is at risk. In this case, we can have an example of, if we get this wrong, we lose the client. For those of you who are entrepreneurs in the building or work in business environments, if we get this wrong, we lose the client. Automatically, that raises people's eyebrows. People want to listen, because what happens if we get this wrong and we lose the client? And then that way they're willing to listen to what you have to say next. So you open with what the stakes are, what the risk is, to really get people's attention going as to what you're going to say next. And always remember, start with the conclusion first. If you are going to lose the client, what's the worst thing that could happen? One thing, say it and move on. That way, your message lands and it earns the room's full attention in one single line. So those are some of the key ways in which you can really frame your questions and your answers when you have been asked to speak, when you've asked to deliver something, in meetings and interviews, or in your everyday engagement and interaction in professional spaces and even in social spaces as well. And finally, our method is deliver. Say less and land more. Really, really important. The less you say, the more you land. Okay. Like I said already, choose one single important point, often the conclusion of what you're going to say. And don't give us all the context and all of that. Make the point in one clear point and state it. I would always say that's what I describe as the rule of one. And then, of course, just cut the hedges. Think of it as, don't think, I think, maybe, sort of, and things that will indicate that you're not sure about something, and you're not really one to trust based off how you're starting your sentence. Go straight to the point, open with something that is clear cut, no pun intended, and that is straight to the point and direct. And once you've said that, stop. When you've landed your one point, stop, and then go quiet. Again, using that pause to trail off and let the silence register with those listening. And then finally, the evidence. Okay. You don't have to shout more to get your point across. We only need one specific example. It works far better than three vague assertions. The concrete detail, whether you use a number, a name, a moment, a point, is what people remember and will repeat. Oh, for example, Lape said there were two important things to remember about that client. People will always remember when you number things or when you have a name to a problem. So I want you to look at the screen. I feel like I've been talking for a while now. I want you to look at the screen, and in the chat, I want you to tell me whether you are B or A. Okay, so there are two text on the screen. I'll read it out for you. One says, so I was thinking about this for a while and I looked at a few different approaches and I spoke to a couple of people, and basically what I think we might want to consider is possibly. This example is very convoluted because your point is automatically lost. You've disengaged the room and your credibility is reduced. And after, the better way to say this would be, from my perspective, the most important issue here is the timeline. Here is why, and here is what I think we should do about it. Your point's landed, the room is listening, and your authority is automatically established. But I want you to look at this and be honest with yourself based off of the text on the screen. Which would you say is typically you? Looking at some of those buzzwords, some of those openers, which would you say is you? And okay, if you can just tell me what people are saying in the chat, and I can just go into a bit more detail.
Okay.
Do we have any so far?
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. A lot of people saying B, right?
So a lot of us
so we have A and B. We have A
good,
and
so
B.
a good mix.
Yeah,
so
it's a mix.
A lot of the
It's
times it's bad habits that we would always say things like, basically, I was thinking, doesn't sound strong. It doesn't sound like you know what you're talking about. I looked at a few different approaches. come up with one approach. What is the one approach you found that you think would work, and go straight directly to the point? And so sometimes we all get lost in the before, that example of before. But essentially, both examples are the same information, it's the same person, but actually it's a completely different impact. After works a lot better because the language used, the framing, the one point, it will land far better than trying to create this very convoluted, confused picture of your ideas. Always remember, don't brainstorm out loud. Brainstorm in your head when you're taking the pause. Choose how you want to deliver that message from your brainstorm in your mind, and then deliver it. And so this is not really about being someone different. It's about who you are already. We all know we can all communicate to a degree, but we can all communicate better and more clearly. And that's what we're after when we're using this method. So always think, pause for 1 to 2 seconds, frame how you're going to open your next sentence. It's okay to think about strong openers, and then deliver your message with 1 point, not 5. So if we look at the screen, we can look at how in real life situations, how many of these can look like. Okay, so somebody asks for you for a status update. Those of you who are analysts in the room, often people will be like, so we've been working on a few things. There have been some blockers, but I think we're mostly on track roughly, right? That doesn't tell me anything. It tells me that you're confused. You have no idea of what the blockers are. It doesn't essentially communicate to me or the rest of the room that you have any concrete point here, or you are speaking from a position of leadership. Instead, actually, what you could say is we are on track for this Friday. Excuse me, we're on track for this Friday. One risk that we've identified, I'm chasing it today, and headline: one risk, one action. Okay, so this is a template of how you could answer that far better. And then there's some others on the screen that you can look at as well. If you've been put on spot in the meeting, which we all have, some of us are in meetings with our cameras off. We don't know that we're going to be called up upon next. Some people will say, oh, I've not really thought about it. I guess maybe we could possibly look at it differently. Again, if you were called upon, you pause. 2 things can stand out. First is the cost. Second, the timing. My take is timing matters more. You then signpost to why the timing makes more sense, and then deliver your point. So they're very choppy, direct, strong ways to answer these. And then finally, we've all had a situation where many of us have had to disagree with someone senior. Naturally, when you are in a lesser position, you often don't want to disagree, or you feel like you shouldn't have to speak back. And some people will often take the position of saying, well, you might be right and I'm probably wrong. No, actually, the way to explain your standpoint is to say, look, I see it differently, and here's why. It's calmed, it's framed. You give one reason, you disagree with the structure, and it shows that you're a bit more competent in how you've put your point across. And actually, in some cases, it gains a lot more respect for you in your delivery. And then here on the screen are some language habits that I've touched on already. Always apologizing before you speak is a massive inconvenience. You don't want to say sorry just quickly. Oh, sorry, please. I actually told my niece off about doing this yesterday. We were having conversations, and she constantly kept saying, sorry, please, can I just, and I said, look, you have to stop starting your sentences with sorry, please, because it becomes a habit. And you grow up with those habits, and you take those into the workplaces, and it automatically undermines you if you're leading with an apology. Instead, just say, look, I want to add something here. And you have the floor, so add your point, add 1 point, and make sure it lands. There's others, like, I'm not sure if this makes sense. You're already planting doubts, already making it sound like you might not know what you're talking about. Instead, just deliver the point. And if they need clarification, they will ask. And then finally, like I said at the beginning, speaking too fast. It often indicates nerves. Whereas when you slow down, you take pauses, you have shorter sentences, you are more likely to have authority in the room, and the room will adjust to your pace. You don't want to speak faster to try and make sure everybody's listening. So in terms of presence and authority, There are 4 ways in which you can own the room before you even start speaking. And we're going to do a practice very quickly. A lot of it is in body language. We've discussed pace. We've talked about making 1 point. Now we're going to talk about very quickly the 3-second reset and your entrance. So before every high stakes moment, your feet should always be flat on the floor. I'm doing it right now. Your shoulders should be back, not stiff, not in like a military type, but just back, relaxed. Take a quiet breath. Always take a breath through your nose. And it's scientific as well, because your nervous system does the rest. If you're taking a deep breath, your feet flat on the floor, your shoulders back, you already look confident. You're going to project your voice and you're going to feel as though what you're about to say is coming from a place of authority. So it's very psychological, it's very scientific. The doctors in the house and the people from science backgrounds can probably attest to this, that it's all very in your mind. Slouching, maybe putting your head down, and all affects your confidence in how you deliver. And then, of course, your entrance, posture, eye contact. I say this even to my students. Look, they come in, they don't look, you don't give a firm handshake, they slouch, they don't have good body language, and people will judge you for that. Unfortunately, that's just how the cookie crumbles. Before you speak, you want to make sure that you have that leadership body language, that you are embodying that authority, so that people look at you, take you seriously, and actually your communication is just the icing on the cake before you've even spoken. So those are some of the kind of physical ways in which you can own the room before even speaking. So now we've dealt with the tips and tricks for speaking, and now, we're looking here at the physical ways in which you can develop. Now, in the world of work from home and remote engagement and all of that, I don't necessarily have the privilege to do all of that, but I've had to teach online, and it's a lot harder trying to own a virtual room. And some of the times we've had to adapt our communication to make sure that we are now communicating effectively in a virtual space where I can't see you, I can't read your body language, I can't give you a firm handshake, I can't look into your eyes. So now I'm having to look at the lens like I'm doing now. So glancing at the lens every now and then between yourself and your PowerPoints and so on, it does feel unnatural, but actually it's more direct. You're conditioning your mind to feel as though you're looking at that person, just as though you would if you were having a FaceTime or video call. And that's where you can center back your authority when you're having those discussions. And online, the pause is actually longer. It doesn't really feel natural, but actually you can still use that after every key point that you make. So the room has enough time to land on what you're about to say. Again, head, shoulders. If you've got good positioning, good framing of your laptop or your device, and it's about a third away from the top, that way people can still feel your presence in the room. And nowadays, I would say a clean frame, good positioning of your camera, is almost equivalent as having a clean suit on when you're going into interviews. And just because of how difficult it is to own the virtual room, we're having to bring more energy. Now, for myself, this would have been a lot easier to connect with you in the room if I was seeing you face to face. But actually, I've had to bring more energy because I can't see. In fact, I can't even see your faces because I have this screen in front of me. And in my case, I'm bringing so much energy, I'm nearly losing my voice, because the camera tends to flatten your energy. People don't really get the vibe of who you are. You can't really see my whole perspective and persona. And so I'm having to lift my voice a little bit more. I'm going to have to express a bit more without making you feel bored. And so for that reason, in a virtual space, for many of us that work from home, you have to make these necessary adjustments to improving your communication skills. Now, if you just look at the screen very briefly, there are moments that will throw you. And these have probably happened to some of you already. When you're interrupted is a good one. When you're put on the spot, or when you lose your thread of thoughts, very common. When people talk over you, it's a power struggle. But if you go silent, you've obviously given them the power to take control. Instead, you can reiterate your point and reaffirm your position and authority by telling people, look, can I finish this one thought? Very calmly, not disruptive, but firm. That way you continue your own pace, and trust me, it never happens again. So it's all in the delivery. And then, of course, when you're put on the spot, like I said already, the panic usually is to rush, is to try and speak very fast and immediately respond. That's how you start rambling, and that's how your point gets lost. In fact, you can buy that time out loud by pausing. You can ask for a second. It's okay to say that you need to think about that, frame your point, and then answer. In fact, thinking time allows people to anticipate what it is that you're about to say next because you've had time to think. And again, when you lose your thread of thought, this happens to some of us on a daily basis. It makes it worse to just keep talking. In fact, it's best to just circle back to your main point that you do remember. And then that way you're not losing your thread of thought and going on and on and on. So those are some of the ways in which you can handle those moments that we all encounter on a daily basis. And so for that reason, these are some of the methods you can try instead. So I know we've only got 5 minutes left of this session, but I'm going to try and speed through it. This is my last slide. So I want you to use the chat section. We're going to compress this slide and the next slide into the last 5 or 10 minutes, depending on how long left I've got with okay. I want you to post a real situation from your work where you feel like a message didn't land or where you were under pressure to respond. And we can rebuild a few of them live out loud using the pause, frame, deliver method. We can spot the habit that you're doing and then how we can reset that together. Those of you who want to engage with that, please feel free to do that in the chat. If you aren't, we can also open the floor to questions about the session, about myself, about what I offer, and then anything that you have that's specific. I can open the floor to that now. In the meantime, if you use the chat section, I will leave it on this page so you're aware, and then we can have about a minute to have that chat, and then we can do a Q&A and wrap it up from there. So I'll give you a second just to write some things in the chat. Okay, again, thanks for helping, but if you want to just have a look at the chat and see if anyone...
Yes, we do have a question. So it says, in case your boss interrupts you, I see you can't tell him, please let me finish. How do I do in this case?
Look, he's your boss. Yes, that's fine. There is a level of hierarchy, but actually you can always solidify your position. You are a esteemed member of the team, which is why you were hired. You do your job. So that shouldn't deter you from letting him know. You can let him finish speaking and you can circle back just as we've explained here. Can I finish the thought that I was trying to explain or elaborate earlier? It's all in your tone and the delivery, okay? Your boss has interrupted you. You can raise your hand back and say, I'm just going to go back and finish my point. And then you can carry on from where you left off. That immediately sends the message to your boss that, okay, this person will always get their point across. The room is listening to their point, and their point actually was well delivered. That would significantly impact whether or not the interruptions will happen again. Instead, if you go silent and cower, there's a likelihood that this will be a pattern of behavior. So it's very important that you use this method, a calm, warm, but firm method, to go back and reaffirm your point. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, so we have another question from Tamara. How do you stop your mind from going blank, even if you already know the answers?
Write things down. I would always say, if you have 3 points to make, write them down whilst the call is going on or whilst you're in a meeting. That way you can take a quick glance. I mean, there's reason why there's PowerPoints. It happens that we're all human. It happens to the best of us. And even for myself, you know, these prompts on the screen are helping me to continuously pick up from where I've left off. Okay, so you can start forming that practice of writing things down. And remember, I talked about numbers. If you have 3 points, even if you remembered 2 and mentioned 1, the fact is you've stuck to that one point and you've delivered it well. So try not to ramble as well when you think that you've gone blank. Try to stick to one point or two. And if you feel like it's becoming a habit where you're always going blank, then write things down before you say, write things down before you're given the opportunity, take notes during a meeting or a discussion. And then that way, if you only focus on remembering one thing, you would find it easier not to go blank if you're trying to remember 5 things. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, we have another question from Amanda. When communicating complex policy information, sometimes stakeholders can glaze over and you lose the room. How can one reset to draw attention back?
Very good question. That happens a lot in professional environments where your work might be technical or you might have a specific role, and people that are, like you said, stakeholders or others from the wider team, like you said, might glaze over. In that case, again, I will always go back to the clear cut method of your framing. If you feel like they're glazing over, then you're not framing and delivering as well as you should be. You should always not rush to speak. Think about what is being asked or what has been requested of you. What are the key important messages and ideas that you can bring from that? Always choose just one. I can't overemphasize that enough. If you choose one good thing, that is a high stakes thing, a big risk to the organization or to the meeting or to even your stakeholders, they will listen. Um, if you are leading with the inverted pyramid that I told you about in journalism, where we lead with the conclusion first or the solution first, again, people will listen. So the reason why that's happened to you, Amanda, I think, is you need to start focusing more on how you frame and deliver those issues. Are there any more questions?
Yes, we do. So Rebecca asked, if you're speaking quickly, are there any tips for slowing yourself down mid-speech?
Yes, it's very elementary. It's funny. I say this to my son all the time. He speaks fast. Um, and think about, I don't know how you were taught how to count numbers, but I always say it's a very good trick. Okay. So always add hippopotamus to after every, it sounds very elementary, but it works every time. When you're counting seconds, always one hippopotamus, two hippopotamus, three hippopotamus. If you're doing that mentally, you're taking breaks after each word, then you're already learning to slow down. If you're somebody that always speaks fast, start thinking in gaps. So after one word, you take a break. After another word, you take a break. They're not 5 second breaks because then you'll start to sound weird. But if you're taking 1 second breaks after each word, then you're more likely to reduce how fast you're talking by at least 20%. So again, like I said, it sounds very, very adolescent and elementary, but actually, if you start thinking in that direction and practicing a lot, like I said, if you don't use the muscle, you won't get any use out of it. So you need to start slowing it down by using any methods. If you have any other fun or cool way to slow down, that will be a very good way to start practicing. And I would always say practice before you have the exam. It's almost like doing the question papers before you have the exam. If you start doing a lot of these methods in your everyday life, you're more than likely to start using them in the professional and working environment because now it has become second nature.
Great. Okay, so we
I'll
have a
take
question from Daniela.
Okay, I'll take 2 more questions. I'm conscious of everyone's time. So I'll
Okay.
take two. Daniela
He
and
said,
one more. Daniela?
yeah, I know speaking confidently is important for first impressions. Is it possible to change opinions of you 2 months into a new job, and how do you go about that?
Absolutely. There's no time to pick up better communications. If this is the impression that has been created of you, you can always change your impressions through the way you interact, through the types of tone you're using in your emails, how you're coming across in meetings. If you feel as though there's a perception of you and actually you're improving your communication and clarity and confidence skills by talking more when the opportunity comes abound in meetings or in interaction. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
In interactions, then you're more likely to change the perception. People will start considering you more. Your name will start coming up in conversations more because now you're making very useful contributions. But not only that, you're making them really well. You're delivering them really well, and it's coming across. It's landing. So it's not too late to change those perceptions. If you can improve the way you deliver, the way you communicate, and how people perceive you, then that can certainly be changed with time.
Right. Okay, so we have just two more questions. Just two more questions. So we have one
Okay.
from Messi. If you have a new boss who always interrupts midway while you're still trying to do a presentation and saying things from his personal experience, but not always correct.
You need to then, again, like I said to, I can't remember, I think it was Asen, I said to at the beginning, um, always circle back. Your delivery of your point should always be, okay, I'm going to go back to my point. I'm going to finish up on what I was trying to say earlier. And if you're delivering the same point over and over again, it's almost like repeating yourself over again, but saying the same thing. Eventually, the message will land. So again, I say to all of you, if you feel like your message is not landing or you're having these issues at work where people are interrupting you, you feel like you speak too fast or your message is not coming across, you need to go back to the drawing board on how you're delivering your message. Is it the openers that you're using? Okay, so these kind of phrases on the screen that reduce your authority. If you say less, you land more. Okay, so instead of rambling, go directly to, I want to add something here. I deliver your point straight away. Okay, you already have the floor. If it's an interruption, again, if somebody's constantly interrupting you, then you can keep saying, look, I have a suggestion here. Raise your hand again to um to secure your authority in the room. Okay. Yes, the person could be your boss. Yes, they could have more experience than you. But actually, in your role that you do, you were employed for the very reason that you can do the job. So you have to show and say and create that perception as to why you're in that room. You're there for a reason, so you need to make it known. So for me, interruptions are not enough to make you cower or to make you feel like that person has won. You can always use methods, delivery methods to circle back and say, okay, I'm just going to finish my point. Two things stand out. Here is one, here is another. This is because, you're signposting and delivering. So always remember that you can use some of these methods and practices to improve your communication. And then we've
Right.
got one last question, isn't it?
All right. So yeah, we have we still have like three more, but so from
Okay,
Alicia.
okay. I mean, if no one's in a rush, I can answer.
Okay, great. So we have from Alicia. I have been told that my vocal tone or accent and energy give the first impression that I am hair-headed. But for those who stay tuned into actual words, they realize I am highly intelligent. Advice for vocal coaching in late 20s.
Right, really, really good question. Complex. I think the whole accent thing and code switching is an ongoing phenomenon that we all experience in different degrees. I think the most important thing is to be yourself. When you try to sound like somebody that you're not, it comes across. And I think a lot of times I've been in rooms on interview panels, interviewing people for television and so on. People that come across as themselves, their message lands much, much more stronger than people that try and sound more sophisticated, more complicated, or try and sound like who they're not. It comes across and it's very much perceived. Okay. So just because people have a certain accent does not mean that they sound more confident. In fact, most of the time, people that sound more sophisticated or use more sophisticated language actually 90% of the time don't have a clue of what they're talking about when they're questioned on that. So don't let that throw you off. What I would say is be yourself, speak the way you normally speak, um and people will understand that actually when she's herself, we can understand. It's about the content of what you're saying, the content of what you're saying, being able to understand and articulate yourself really well, your points that you're making, how you're making them. Don't talk for too long. Again, don't ramble. straight to the point, make one strong point that you've identified, and keep it simple. And that way, people might say, you don't speak much, but actually, when you do speak, people listen, which is the most important thing here. So don't get caught up in the whole accent thing and people not understanding how I'm sounding. You're speaking English in most cases at the end of the day, and if you can speak English, people can understand you. Instead of making yourself sound more elaborate, speak the way you would speak to your peers, but be clear. Don't over sophisticate your language. Don't try and make more points than you need to so that your initial point gets lost. It's really important here to be yourself and forget about the whole accent and sounding more sophisticated than needed. I hope that answers your question.
All right.
Right, should we
One
I
more.
think
The only
okay.
other modulations, yeah, so this is from Alisa. The only other modulations I'm able to perform naturally are either sharp and authoritative when upset and explaining my rationale. In this tone, I observe others give special attention. The other is slowly and intentionally.
Okay, so again, peculiar question, but I think um it's all in the practice. If you can consistently practice a different type of delivery, a different type of approach, and using a different type of approach, in this case, the pause frame deliver method, you should be able to channel your responses elsewhere, and hopefully gain a different type of response from those you interact with. I think for many of you in the room, and not just Alyssa, for many of you in the room, you're used to doing things the way you've been doing it for many, many years. And this might sound like a new language or a different language. And that's why it's important to always practice methods like this. I have an ebook with a lot of this in that I will share the link in the chat that you can all download and read and practice these methods. A lot of these questions and answers are the solution is in using an alternative method that many of you might not have heard before, may not have encountered before, using that and seeing if this actually changes the outcome and result of your interactions and engagements. So I would say, Alyssa, using an alternative method that you've practiced over time. I always tell people, look, use the mirror, speak to yourself in the mirror, read books to use different types of openers, watch debates to see how people articulate themselves in intense conversations. That way, you are using a different approach that isn't something that you've always done, and you're taking from that and applying it to your everyday professional experiences. And that way, it gives you a different perspective of how to approach those scenarios. I would say you can all download the ebook and see how you can develop some of those questions and answers that we've had here, and how you can use those methods to practice. I understand the questions are finished and we're way over time now, but just so you know, I do offer one-to-one coaching, executive practicing, as well as media training and public speaking workshops, bespoke ones as well for people that are having ongoing challenges or issues that want me to tailor it to their issues. I do offer those, that you can find me on social media. On Instagram, I'm at Clearcut Training. LinkedIn is at Clearcut Training. My email address is info@clearcutcommunications.co.uk. I will pass on all this information to OK, and I would also put it in the chat for you, as well as the link to the ebook that you can all download. Please do give me a follow. I'm very open to conversation and discussions. And if you feel like this is something that you're very much interested in developing and helping in your career trajectory, then please get in touch with me. Thank you so much for committing your evening to this. I really hope it was useful to you. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. I don't know if I often sound like this. I'm under the weather today. But I do hope it was useful, and that you gained some gems that I really hope that you take into practice. But it was lovely having you. It's an honor to be here to speak to you all. And thank you to those who used the chat for sharing your stories and experiences. And I hope some of those tips, tricks, and methods are going to help you in your journey of developing your communication. Thank you so much, okay, for moderating this. I really appreciate your help. Um, and I am open to anything else that you need me to do. Okay, thank you so much for listening, guys.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much, Lape, for sharing these tools with us. This was such a valuable session. Please do share your links via the comment section, your ebook links, your social media links in the comment section.
Yeah,
Because
I will do. I'll just pop it in the
yeah.
chat now.
Thank you all for joining. Please, you can also share, on your socials, on your LinkedIn, what you've learned today, and you can tag Lape, on LinkedIn, Instagram, just so people know what is going on in the community. Thank you all for joining today. So we wait for Lape to share our links, our ebook links as well, and our mail. So you can always follow up with our.
I do post some videos on Instagram and TikTok, and on like these little gems and things that you can add as well if you're still considering doing kind of one-to-one workshops and that kind of thing. But like I say, if it is something that you are trying to develop and improve, then please reach out to me. My email address, I'm just writing in the chat now. And then the link to my ebook is here. It's via Linktree. So you will need to put in all of name, your name and your information, and then you can click download. So if you click on that link, it will take you to Linktree, and it will tell you to download the guide that you can all use. So that's it from me. Thank you so much, guys.
We are
Again,
glad you all found it insightful. So
thank you
much
very
positive responses. This is
Thank you.
so
I'm glad.
nice.
I
Yeah.
will send you now. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks for
Stay.
joining, Bernardine. We can see you now. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, so
Right.
everyone, have a lovely evening. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. See you later.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Okay. See you.
Yeah.